Turning your Bibles with me to Luke chapter 1. We're going to start in verse 26. We looked at Matthew last week. We looked at the account in Matthew, and we talked about Emmanuel, God with us. Emmanuel, God with us. When we talked about how Emmanuel, God with us, the name Jesus wasn't simply an observation. It wasn't just something that, someone, God looked down and thought, hey, look, there's Jesus in human form hanging out with people. Let's call him, God with us, because he's with people. No, God with us, we looked at last week, is a mission statement. It's Jesus' heart. It's God's heart from the very beginning to have a relationship, to be with his creation, to be with his people. Emmanuel, God with us. There's so much intentionality behind what that means, and it deserves the time to look at it and to dive into it, which is what we did. Last week. And so, Emmanuel, God with us, such an incredible statement, an incredible purpose and plan of God, and an incredible direction for our own lives to understand, what is God communicating to us? Well, what he names his son might give us an idea of what he's looking at, and it's relationship. It's God with us. There we go. We're having trouble with our PowerPoint system. We upgraded Easy Worship, and it's just not jiving with the PowerPoint stuff. So it's all up there. We'll get to it all. So Luke 1. Let's read there. I'll explain the title first, if you like. Being an avid basketball player, a number of commercials came out when Michael Jordan was still playing. I want to be like Mike. Right, and it was all about being like Michael Jordan. Well, I don't want to be like Mike. Little play on words. Be like Mary. I want to talk about how Mary represents a number of things. So Luke 1:26 says this: in the 6th month, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. The virgin's name was Mary. The angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored. The Lord is with you." Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. But the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid. Mary, you have found favor with God. You will be with child and give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus. He will be great." We just sung about that all morning. He will be great, and he is great, and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever. His kingdom will never end. Amen. That's fantastic. Verse 34, "How will this be?" Mary asked the angel, "since I am a virgin." The angel answered, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age, and she who was said to be barren is in her 6th month, for nothing is impossible with God." Verse 38, Mary responds, "I am the Lord's servant. May it be to me as you have said." Then the angel left her. So we have this incredible passage and this incredible miracle that happens to Mary. And I want to look at 3 ways in which there are parallels between what Mary went through and what God has called us to. And the first is this. The first is that we have this incredible picture of how Jesus came into the world by Mary carrying Jesus. And in the same, I'm not going to say in the same way, but in a parallel picture, we've been called to carry Jesus as well. We are carriers of his presence. We are carriers of who he is. We are carriers of his kingdom. We have been called to house, to be mobile tabernacles of God and his presence. Christ in you, the hope of glory. We have been called to be a carrier of Jesus, just like Mary was. And so there's a lot of parallels in this picture of pregnancy. And I was just thinking as I was preparing this, having 2 beautiful children of our own, and being Candace's husband, and going through the process and all of the conversations. There's something incredible that happens when you know you're carrying something else, or even better, when you're carrying someone else. There's a lot of things you start to take into consideration, and there's a lot of changes that start to happen because you start making decisions based on who it is that you're carrying. You start to make changes in food. You start to make changes in what it is you're drinking. The What to Expect When You're Expecting book and all its tidbits of what you should be doing. But you start to change your lifestyle, the way you live, the way you walk, because now you're thinking about this other person that you're carrying. Right, and there's a lot of parallels in there when you come to the realization and know the truth that Christ is in you, that that He lives inside of you. You start thinking, well, what does that mean? How do I live if I'm actually carrying Jesus? What sorts of things do I do and not do? What sorts of rhythms and patterns of life do I step into, knowing that I have this honor of hosting Jesus, of hosting the presence, of carrying His presence forward into the earth, everywhere I go. And so that's one. I've got this picture of careful how I word this. One of the joys of, and I've had it twice, right? One of the joys of participating in this process, I just gotta say it, is the big baby belly. Love you. It's just so wonderful, right? And there's this incredible picture that Mary was full of God, right? I mean, God could have done it another way. Bellies maybe could have been a lot smaller. They could have been easier to hide, but He didn't do it that way. It was noticeable. It was evident. Look, this person has another person inside of them. Right? Like, there it is, the big baby belly. It's so beautiful. It's this picture that, when Jesus was conceived in Mary, she grew physically, but it was this outward picture of the inward reality of, you're full of God. You're full of purpose. You're full of something else, right? Candace and I, Pastor Carl from London, before we moved to Kingston, he used to talk about the verse that rivers of living water would flow out of your belly. And he said, if that's the case, he said, I must have a lot of God that I need to give out. Right? It's this picture that you are carrying something, and that something also wants to get out, right? So while Mary carried baby Jesus physically, Jesus also lives inside of us. And I want to look at, since this is God's mission, I want to look at very quickly, four different places in the Bible where this idea is brought across. God is so wise in His communication that He does it in a manner of different ways with different pictures. And if you notice as I'm reading, depending on your history in the church, one might be highlighted more than the other. Think, yeah, I've heard sermons on that a lot, or I've heard sermons on that a lot, but I haven't heard a lot on that. And because there's diversity in our church, some may jump out more than others, but God is so incredible the way He brings it all together and the way He gives us these different pictures and expressions. So let's get through it. So number one is one of the ones we looked at last week is Matthew chapter 1, Emmanuel, God with us. And that's such an incredible picture. That's so affirming and confirming. It just blesses us to know that God is with us. He'll never leave us, and He'll never forsake us. And the second is Colossians 1:27. Paul talks about, this is my ministry. This is the message that God has given me. He even says in a bigger picture, this is the mystery that's been hidden since the foundation of the world. This is the statement of the gospel. Christ in you, the hope of glory. Christ in you, the hope of glory. Just another angle of God saying, this is my mission. This is my heart for you. This is my desire. Christ in you, the hope of glory. Here's another one. Acts chapter 2. We have this incredible outpouring of the Spirit of God, pours the Spirit out on all flesh, right? Peter stands up, the preacher, he stands up to describe what is happening in this moment right now. He stands up and he says, no, this is what was spoken by the prophet Joel. I will pour out my Spirit on all people. Another expression and another picture of this incredible thing that God has called us to, this relationship, this union, this togetherness, the He and us and Him, and we together, right? And the last one also I mentioned last week is Hebrews 8, right? The purpose of the new covenant. So, I mean, he aims for those that maybe lean towards the law or legalism or like the structures. So he says, well, here's the new covenant. Here's the new structure that I'm going to give you, the new relational contract, the new relational covenant that I'm going to give you. And of course, the statement we looked at last week is that Jesus says, God says, they will all know me. God's heart is beating right there for you. His heart is beating to know you and for you to know Him and for you to exchange life, to exchange thoughts, to moment by moment each day be in relationship and have conversation, and for there to be an incredible awareness of His presence, an incredible awareness that He is with you everywhere you go, that no matter where you go, no matter what you step into, there's an awareness of His presence. There's a sense that it's tangible. You can feel it. He is there with you no matter what you face. God's mission is relationship, is intimacy with you. You are a carrier of Jesus, and you are full of it. Yeah, I've been waiting to say that for a long time. You can go home, tell your family, tell your friends. You can post on Facebook. The pastor today told me that I was full of it. You are jam-packed. You are a carrier of Jesus' presence. You are a carrier of His Spirit. I like that so much. I may start a series around that and tell you that every week. Number 2, the second way that we are like Mary is that she released or birthed Jesus into the world. It's one thing to be a carrier of God. It's another thing to know how to or to even want to release Him into our world, into our communities, into our families, into our relationships, into our marriages, into our children, into our workplaces, into our place of worship. It's one thing to carry Jesus. It's another to say, He's got to get out. He's got stuff that He wants to do. There's stuff that He wants to say. There's things He wants to do. If the resurrection power of Jesus lives in me, then maybe that wants to get out and touch the person beside me and minister to those that are around me. It's one thing to be a carrier. It's another thing to be a releaser of Jesus, of His kingdom, of His presence. We have the honor of presenting Him, of representing Him, of introducing Him. He has asked us to partner with Him to carry His presence and release His presence into the world, to take His glory and to continue to release that, to carry it and to release it. Look, there's some for you and there's some for others. Never worry about it running out. The rivers that run out of your belly, well, rivers don't stop. They don't stay stagnant. They just keep pouring out. They pour in and they pour out. It's this incredible picture of what God has called us to. And this idea of God in your life, I want you to know, it's noticeable. It's obvious. If you have a picture of Mary carrying Jesus, maybe in the 9th month, you know what? It's obvious. It's noticeable that she was carrying somebody. It's noticeable that she's carrying Jesus. And you know what? It's noticeable when you carry Jesus. It's noticeable that you're carrying Him and that you are releasing Him. Physically, it was noticeable that she was carrying Jesus. I want to share with you very quickly simply what I saw this morning when I stepped into the church. And I want you to see how much I see God in you. How noticeable it is that you folks carry and release God. When I got here this morning, there was a worship team that was already in practice, and I don't even know for how long they'd already been practicing for. It was evident that God is in them and was being released from them. When I came this morning, I saw an 11-year-old girl practicing here before the pastor. Don't fire me for that. Here before the pastor, practicing her dance number for the Christmas presentation next week. I saw God in her. I could see God living in her and expressed through her. When I came, I saw somebody sweeping the underhang because the dirt and salt had spread a little close to the doors. And I saw God in that person. I saw somebody that had come early to fill a void because we had a missing member on the audio visual team. In all these ways, I can see that this community and you people are full of God. I can see his love in your face. I can see his kindness in this community. I can see the compassion in the expressions of relationship that happen in this community. I can see your faith. I can see your hope that even though this is a difficult time and even though there are things going on in the world, I see your faith, I see your hope that is carrying you through and believing that God is still doing great things and that he has an incredible plan for this season and that his name today is greater than any other name. I see God in you. It's noticeable and it's obvious. Here's the third way that we are like Mary, we can be like Mary. Look back at verse 38, and it's in the response. And she says this, she says, I am the Lord's servant. May it be to me as you have said. Then the angel left her. No, relationship is a two-person thing. It really is. And God has done so much for us. He has blessed us. I can tell you one thing, he is not holding back. He is not up there waiting for this or waiting. He is not holding back. He has released it all. 2,000 years ago, he gave everything he had. He left no T uncrossed and no I undotted. He has given it all. But you know what he's waiting for? A response, a yes. Someone to say, yeah, I'll agree with that. Yes, I will participate in that. I want to be part of that. Relationship, it takes two, and it's vitally important to the health of our relationship with God that we are able to respond to him, that we're able to respond and say, yeah, I want to get on board with your plan. I want to get on board with what it is you're doing. I want to get on board with this Christ in me, the hope of glory. I want to get on board with it. So as I've told you already, as I was preparing on Friday morning, I got the inspiration for what I wanted what I felt God wanted me to share. And around lunchtime, I got this text message, and I want to read it to you because it's incredible how things are lining up. And there's something else I want to share too after of just how God has totally orchestrated this moment right now. How God has been so involved in this morning and us gathering together. This is so again, after I'd already got the inspiration, this text message came and said, the yes that needs to be in our spirits to move out into all that God is directing us into. I'm not sure that we comprehend fully that we are being prepared and what we are being prepared for if the church is going to walk forward into his calling. The yes that needs to be in our spirits to move out into all that God is directing us into. And I just thought, wow, that is the pinnacle, the finishing point, the pinnacle of a message. And God has lined it all up for today. So look how the passage ends, right? I know that the people that put the Bible together, put chapters together and all that sort of stuff. But look how this passage ends, because verse 39 clearly moves on to a different thought and a different setting. Then the angel left her. Then, when? Then. Why then? Because it was when she agreed. Okay, she's got it. I can move on, right? He knew the job was done. He knew the finish had come because her heart had displayed the agreement with God to say, yeah, I'm in. God, I'm in. I'm with you. This looks strange. This may look weird. I've never seen this before in the history of the earth. But God, I know you, and I'm in. The angel has spoken, God, you have spoken, and I'm in. This is about our agreement to be on board with God's plan. It all boils down to our response to God's question, will you carry my presence? And will you release my presence? Will you carry my personhood and release my presence wherever you go? We are mobile tabernacles of God's presence. It all boils down to that question and our response to that question. And look, you say, but I've got so many questions. I've got so many questions. Well, you know what? So did Mary. You're not alone. You know, you've got, what does that look like? What does it mean? How's my life going to change? You know, interpret all these verses for me, Adam. Go a little deeper. You know, I need more explanation. Well, you know what? So did Mary, right? Verse 29. What does she say? She says, I love this. Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. What was it that the angel said? Greetings, you are highly favored. The Lord is with you. You know, I don't know if I'd be greatly troubled by that. I'd probably be greatly encouraged by that. I'm thinking, yeah, amen. An angel just showed up and told me I'm highly favored and that God's with me. I'm going to go take over the world. But not Mary. She was greatly troubled. And you know what? That speaks to the individualism. And all of us here today are at different places. And you know, what questions you have, I may not have, or the questions I have, you may not have, or the questions that the person beside you has is not the same as your own. But you know what? God can answer all the questions. So Mary has these questions, and what else does she say? Verse 34, how will this be, right? She experiences these feelings of uncertainty. There's a lack of knowledge. Maybe there's some doubt and fear in there. Maybe there's some past hurts or experiences or some, you know, we all have our different journeys that we've been on. And we have to process what we've been through and what we're facing and what it is that God is asking us to do. There's maybe some discomfort. And you know what? It's okay to have questions. I want to give you the permission to have questions. Because if you don't have questions, you'll never grow. If you don't have questions, you'll never get answers and you'll never grow. Right? Questioning God is about truth seeking. It's not about doubt. However, when you know the truth and you keep questioning or resist, that's doubt. But when you have questions and you hear the truth, then you are enabled and empowered to live that out. So, you know, it's okay to have questions. It's only doubt when you know the truth and you don't do it and you don't step into it. That's just a little side note. There were feelings of uncertainty, discomfort, all these other things, and maybe you feel like Mary and you haven't fully given God your yes. Or maybe you've tried to tailor it so that you wouldn't be as uncomfortable. Maybe you've looked at these 4 scriptures we've looked at and you've tossed a couple out because they make you a little uncomfortable, or, you know, I don't really like how God worded that, or, you know, that was a little different. Maybe it was a little too strange for you, or maybe it was too structured for you, or, you know, maybe there's too many unknowns, or maybe we just don't want to give up control and trust God and what He's asking of us. And you know what? I get it. I get it because I've had my own journey And I get it because we all at some point have to look at this question. We all at some point come to the place where we say, am I going to get on board or am I not? We all have to face this question at some point. And so let's look at Mary's response, because this is incredibly important, but it's also incredibly beautiful. She says this right at the beginning of verse 38, I am the Lord's servant. Mary comes to this place where, whether she was able to work through her fears and doubts in that short amount of time, or her past hurts from past experiences, or her wrong mindsets, whether she was able to work through her discomfort or not, she came to the realization that, oh, what am I doing? I'm not my own. I was bought at a price. I'm the Lord's servant. So no matter whether I have fears or doubts, we need to move ahead. There's an incredible reality that you can trust God, because if God says it, you can know that He's got your best at heart. You can know that He is faithful and true, that He is worthy of trusting, and He's leading you into something that's glory to ever-increasing glory, something that's better, something that's going to benefit you and bless your life. And Mary comes to this incredible place where, it's not even clear whether she resolved all her questions and all these things, or everything that was going on in her heart, but she comes to the place where she says, wow, it doesn't even matter. I'm the Lord's servant. I love God. I can trust Him. I know Him, and I will move forward with what it is that He has for me. Another side note, and we are winding down. When we are uncomfortable or unwilling, we often find other plans. And these other plans are often noble. We try to justify them, and even though they are noble, they're often a deviation of the main goal. There are a lot of things that you can grab onto in here. We talked about that. We talked about it last week. There are things that are very noble, and you can grab onto them and you can move ahead with them, but sometimes they're just deviations from the main goal, which is Emmanuel, God with us, which is relationship, which is being a carrier of God's presence, His person, a carrier of His glory, and releasing it into our world. So no matter what questions Mary had, she was able to give her yes, because she trusted God and trusted what the angel had told her. And no matter what fears, doubts, past experiences, hurts, wrong mindsets, no matter what it is that you have, looking at this issue, no matter where it is that you are, I am certain, I am convinced that you can trust God as well. I know God. I know that He's safe in the right sense of the word. I know that He loves you. I know that He has got the best life possible for you. I know what He's done for you, everything that He's deposited into your life. You can trust Him. His plan, the last 4 statements, His plan of Emmanuel, God with us, it's good. I just want to declare it. It's really good. His plan of Emmanuel, God with us, it's wise. No matter what you think about it or where you are with it, it is good. His plan of Christ in us, the hope of glory, well, that's a good one too. That's really good. I mean, incredible wisdom and insight, incredible blessing. His plan of the new covenant in which all will know Him, that's really good too. That's a huge blessing for us as people. His plan to have poured out His Spirit on all flesh, oh, that's good too. That's really good. There's just a big platter of goodness here for us today, of an incredible feast of who God is and what He's done for us and the relationship that He's brought us into. God's plans and purposes for you are really, really good. And if you're not sure, there's a verse that I know you can quote, and it's from the book of Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you. I love this part. Not to harm you. How many people think God's out to take or to harm them or to lead them into things they're not comfortable with? Not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes with me this morning? And could I have the ministry team, if we have one, and the band, if we have one of them too?